Hello, I'm Lottie Unwin and welcome to something a bit different. We're launching a new mini-series called The Marketing Hustle Hot Takes, where we're ditching the filter and diving into the real, sometimes controversial conversations happening in marketing right now. I'm with James Hickson, who has built Brand Hackers with me, and he is going to be my co-host for 6 hot chats. I can't wait to hear what you think. This is very much an experiment. We all know the struggle, spending time, budget and creativity on a campaign, only to wonder, will this actually land? Well, this is where Sticky Beak comes in. Sticky Beak is a game changer for consumer testing, which I'm so passionate about, helping you make your marketing more effective by getting real consumer feedback on your brand's campaigns and products quickly and affordably. So why Sticky Beak? You can get fast, reliable insights in 48 hours or less. Testing won't blow the budget. It costs hundreds, not thousands. You can reach your target audience globally. You can test everything from logos to taglines, messaging, creative, packaging, promotion, and more. And I really believe in marketing data-driven decisions, and you'll hear me wang on about the power of insights. So I'm very proud of this partnership. Visit stickybeak.co/marketinghustle to book a free 30-minute strategy call and discover how they can help. Plus, you get some free Sticky Beak credits to get you started, so well worth giving it a go. How many marketing people do you think we've hired?
Well, I guess we've got a team of about 18, and we've had a load of people come and go. I reckon maybe 30 to 40.
I reckon 30 to 40.
Including, you know, good and bad. Some that worked out, some that didn't.
Yeah, and there's some tails in that.
Yeah.
And then I've probably placed 100 people through Up Talent over the years. And we must have interviewed 300?
Yeah,
400?
easily. I think for each role, we're probably interviewing 30 to 40 people at a time for each role.
Do you think?
Yeah, because if you think about it, you get all the initial applications, if you include screeners and just everything. You get a lot of applications.
Yeah, but we're not talking to 30 or 40 people.
Could be.
Okay.
Maybe we're interviewing.
I'm so worried about how you're spending your days. We need to discuss this.
This is why it takes so long to hire.
Yeah.
Maybe we're interviewing 15 to 20 people for each role. I suppose we're not individually interviewing.
No, but like as a collective. Okay, yeah. So we were chatting earlier about our hypothesis that we know a thing or two about how to hire marketeers. And I mean, fundamentally, that is our business. Like we say to the world, we're better at hiring marketing people than you might be, and therefore trust us, let us build this team, and we'll train this team, and they're great. So, all right, so let's start with the premise that we're a bit of an expert.
We've kind of got to be, because our product is our people.
Otherwise,
so we're not very good at hiring them, then we're not got a very good product.
What do you think, what have we learned? What's the secret?
God, that's a good question. Yeah, what is the overall secret? I think for me, it comes down to, I guess, having a really clear idea of what we're looking for the job, which I know sounds really obvious, but like a very...
It took us 2 years to work out that.
I know. Well, we're 4 years in, so we're getting there. But what I mean is, having a very clear, not just like in the job description, but the fact that we now know what we want, what they're going to be doing, kind of what are our green flags, what are our red flags, what are our non-negotiables, what are the skill sets that we kind of, that this person must have, all those sort of things. It sounds really obvious, but actually I think lots of people go, I need a marketing manager. I'm going to put up a fairly generic marketing manager job description and just they get everyone. Whereas if you go in much more specific and say, well, what's this person going to be doing day to day? Actually, I think we need to build a job description very specific. So it's almost like marketing manager might be the job title, but within that, there could be 5 different job descriptions.
And that's both, as we've learned, in terms of the quality of candidate, because someone can take a really good look and make a decision as to whether that's the job they want, but also how much that sped up the review process. Like, we know what we're looking for.
Yeah.
When before we were like, let's just chat to everyone. I think we were just so humbled before that anyone would apply.
Yeah. You want to work with us?
Yeah. Like, let me call you to say thank you for applying.
Yeah.
But now we've been able to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think then if you kind of have that very sort of rigid clarity in your mind, then looking at a CV or a LinkedIn or a portfolio just becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
Because you go, well, actually, this person's really good. They're just not good for what we need.
Yeah.
Or they're not quite right or whatever it might be.
You have this killer question. This is a little tip to anyone who's ever been interviewed by James about what your learning diet is, which I think is just amazing. And that's because it guess it's a recognition that we're never interviewing anyone who knows everything about the job.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And it's also, I think, the most impressive people I've worked with, I tend to find are very curious. And I think curiosity is something that is quite hard to coax out in an application process. And so one of the best ways to do it is just put someone on the spot and just say, kind of, what do you listen to? What do you read? Where do you find out stuff? Because if there's someone who does do a lot of that stuff, they'll say, oh, these are the 5 newsletters I read every week. I'm always listening to these 3 podcasts, and I went to this event last year. And it won't be a difficult question to answer. Whereas if they go, and they really sort of stumble over things and then come out with Diary of a CEO as their learning diet, then you go, cool. That's not bad, but it's not quite what I was hoping for.
I mean, it is quite alarming if that's what they're learning.
And that is alarming, but
Do you understand how contradictory and toxic that information is?
Stephen might be listening, so we don't want to upset him.
I think I appreciate your concern for our big audience.
You just never know.
You've got to be ready.
Yeah, but I think that point around, because I think if you're curious around your subject, but also sometimes I say, kind of what's your learning diet? Yeah, around marketing, around your field of expertise, if it's social, whatever. But actually, also, what else do you do? So I used to have this, this is kind of, I'm a bore at a party. And if my kind of line would be that if you want to be interesting, then listen to Radio 4 for 20 minutes a day at any time of day. So it doesn't have to be the same time, but if you switch it on for 20 minutes any day, apart from maybe 7 o'clock when the Archers is on, you'll learn something interesting, and you'll be a kind of more interesting, rounded person because you'll just be listening. And I used to do this a lot because I used to have a job where I was driving around a lot, and I just have Radio 4 on. And so I'd be listening to a program about, something around the Arctic Circle, and then it'd be followed by Women's Hour, and they'd be talking about, period care, and then there'd be something else. And, you just get this kind of absolute onslaught of various things. And if you just let yourself listen and be curious, you're just a more interesting person. And then I think for marketing, that's really important. Yeah. Like marketing is a discipline that requires creativity, curiosity, innovation, however you want to describe that. And that doesn't come if you only are very focused in one area. So that's why I like that question.
I think I'm trying to think like what my version of that question is. And it's always a question around like whether someone has an impetus to get shit done. Like I just know that there are people who are proactive before you've asked them to be. And I think that comes back to like what clubs you were in at school and like how you approached your first job or what you did at university. Like it's a similar thing. I really love your theme of curiosity, but it's starting so early. And I think leadership or like proactive, bias to action, as we would talk about it, starts so early, and that's such an important trait in startup marketers.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think you and I used to talk about, we used to have a bit of a bias for anyone who has any kind of side hustle or who's run a business. And I think as we've grown and needed slightly different things, I think that's become less important, or at least less of a kind of a deal breaker. Because almost like sometimes that can skew that they're not quite right in other ways. But what it always just showed me was, so you're someone who thought something was interesting, wanted to try it, and just did it. Yeah. And that side hustle could be anything. It could be a photography project, or it could be a business. It doesn't need to be sort of commercially focused. Yeah.
There's also so tricky. Like I obviously the language around like, do you want to go for a beer with them is challenging and is like really complex from a diversity perspective. But I think we've been on a journey to have to recognise that creating chemistry or being able to build instant rapport is really important. And I think in a startup environment, like we basically run an agency, in which case that's like obviously really important. But I think in any startup role, that is really important. It's quite uncomfortable to say, I need to feel like I can chat to you, or that you can chat to anyone, and that be a priority. But I really believe it is.
Yeah. I think for a couple of reasons. Like one is that you're going to be spending so much time with these people, and there won't be many people in that team. Even a large startup, like a Lucky Saint, it's still only 50 people, 60 people. So there aren't really places to hide like you could in a big corporate. If you want to go really literal, you're probably going to be spending physical time together, maybe doing sampling or events or whatever it might be. But also just, it's a sort of place where any kind of startup environment, you can't just sit in your silo and do your thing. You are just going to be kind of involved in lots of different things, and therefore you do kind of need to be able to just get on and build rapport really quickly.
Yeah. Oh God, it makes me so like, the kind of like, am I saying the right thing triggers flair when you're like, oh, is like, that's not to say that I think that you have to want to go on holiday, or like, I remember someone saying to me years ago, the test is, would you be comfortable sitting next to them on a long haul flight? And that's a high bar.
Yeah.
Like, there are very few people I want to sit next to on a long haul flight. So like,
exactly.
I mean, like literally none of them.
I mean, I'm usually sat next to a 3-year-old on a long haul flight.
Well, yeah, your bar is low.
I may take a
I was sitting between two large Spanish snoring men on Monday morning, and I was like, okay, I take any of my team over these guys.
Innocent used to have a thing where they called it what do they call it? The grassy van test. So because they used to have these grassy vans, and they used to say, would I be happy to go into a trade show with you in Scotland, i.e. a 6-hour drive in the grassy van sitting next to you? So the same sort of thing. Again, this is going back 15, 20 years.
I don't think it's been cancelled. I don't think you can do that anymore.
I agree with that, but there is that element of you do want to enjoy the people you go to work with.
Yeah, and commercially, like so much of operating on small businesses is getting stuff done kind of on a favour or kind of on the basis of a relationship or a rapport. And even if you're not in a sales role and you have no sales element to your job, you're selling ideas and concepts and deals to other stakeholders outside of the business all the time. And so, yeah, for me, like being charismatic is really important, even if it's not purest marketing skill.
But do you think you can't be a marketer if you're not that charismatic, or if you are quite narrow-minded, or if you are, you could be very, very good at one thing, but if you're, introverted is the wrong word, because I think actually a lot of our team are quite introverted, even though they're great marketers.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that's the thing.
No, I don't think that's the axis.
I think it's, and I don't know what the axis is or what the right words are. Charisma maybe is the sort of thing. Is that kind of gregariousness or just.
Yeah.
I think you're right around. You are having to sell things, whether it's internally as an idea, whether it's to sort of to your mates about getting them interested in the brand, whether it's to a social media post or whatever. I guess you do need to be able to bring personality. Maybe personality is the answer.
Yeah.
Most people in marketing do have quite.
I think it's massively about the size of a team, because there's definitely a point where you hit a scale where there can be a creative who is incredible, who like you can have niche roles at a point where there could be a data analyst or a creative or a CRM manager, like that level of specificity where actually your like interface with the rest of the team and the world might be quite limited, in which case personality, if that's what we're going to call it, doesn't matter so much. But if you're building a team of 3, 4, 5, as you say to like the Lucky Point example, then yeah, I think it really matters. I think it is really career limiting if you don't have that confidence, personality, ability to like show up and make someone want to hang out with you.
And do you think that's because that's potentially problematic for some people? So do you think that's something, if you feel like that might limit your career and you are that person, what do? Do you get trained? Do you try and get over it? Do you listen to some podcasts, watch some YouTube videos, do some sort of self-training, or do you go, actually maybe this isn't the right career for me?
Can it be coached? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that's the question. Yeah.
I think.
Because I think it can be.
Yeah, I think it can be. I don't know what the reading list for it is.
Maybe a Tony Robbins seminar.
Yeah, I think it's more
but it's something like that.
Confidence.
Okay.
And about doing a bit more public speaking. I mean, we have a wonderful example in the team of someone who joined us, who will be listening to this and know who they are, who joined the team, and I think it was just like a lot for them. And then at our Christmas party, stood up and made an hour-long speech giving awards to everyone in the business. And like personality by the bucket load. And that's not to say it wasn't there before, but I think like it had all felt a bit much. And so often I don't think it's that people don't have personality. It's just that they, for whatever reason, they think that like professional environments aren't asking them to bring it or encouraging it, or they're not feeling celebrated as who they are. Like, I think it's a cultural issue.
This is, I think, a really interesting point. And I think there's a point maybe to pick up on remote versus in-person on that point. But the bringing your personality to work thing, I think is so interesting. There's a guy who started The Hustle, the newsletter The Hustle. He does a podcast now. And he talks about, so they were all in person, and he used to love just hiring, what he would call freaks and weirdos, which probably getting cancelled maybe, but he would always talk about, he loved people who would come in, bring their whole personality to life, and what he would say is, he described it as let their freak flag fly. That's a hard thing to say.
It's a good tongue twister.
Yeah, that is a good one. But the point he's trying to make is that like he wants people to be there as themselves, not kind of put this professional front on, not put this kind of other personality on, because ultimately his business was a creative business. It was sending out, a business-focused newsletter that had a lot of personality, and also he didn't want to work in a boring environment. So, he encouraged that. Now, what would that feel like if you were quite introverted and maybe that wasn't your thing? Well, I'd hope that it kind of works both ways. If you're quite out there, then you bring that, and if you're not, then you don't, and that kind of works, and and it works well as well. But it's an interesting one whether being in an office altogether makes a difference in terms of being able to bring that versus being remote, where most of your communication is probably by Slack, and then you're kind of on a few calls throughout the week, but not much else. I wonder how that plays.
There's also a right, I think a really important right to not. You have the right to bring your whole self to work. You also have the right to not bring your whole self to work. If there's bits of yourself you want to leave at home because it's actually cathartic or an escape, to not be all bits of your identity, I think that's also totally fine.
Definitely.
I think we're getting a bit...
And I think everyone should.
I think this authenticity obsession is going a bit over the top. It's also quite helpful sometimes to say, I'm not going to moan about what's in my head because it will distract, I'm going to get my job done and that will distract me, as opposed to showing up as...
Yeah, but there's a difference between saying, I'm going to come with my personality, doesn't mean I'm going to therefore tell you everything about my life. You know what I mean? I can come and be my own, and be myself, right? In the same way I am.
Yes,
it doesn't mean I need to tell you about what's happening in my personal life every day.
Yes,
I don't think the two are interlinked.
No, I guess it's quite binary of me to say that there's all or nothing.
Possibly.
Okay, so we were talking about what we think makes a great startup marketer. We've said curiosity, bias to action, and charisma or personality. What have we missed? Strategy. So, and strategy, for me, it's strategy with a tiny s. I think the word strategy gets thrown around way too much.
I see a lot of people on LinkedIn who are strategists these days.
Yeah. What strategy are you doing? For who?
Exactly.
Where is it going? In Google Drives is the answer.
Yes.
Just filling up servers. So, but I think there's absolutely people who have an ability to make decisions and can observe a load of information and distill that into, okay, well, this is the strategic decision through that. And maybe it's decision making, maybe that's a better word than strategy.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe, your view, which I agree with, is strategy is what you say no to as opposed to what you say yes to, right? And
it's just the art of making a decision. any decision.
Well, yes, make a decision, yeah. I prefer the way you put it when you say make tough choices. No, because that's right. Well, because the decision is the tough choice is the thing you've got to make. I think that's a really hard skill to learn when you're fairly early on in your career, because it's hard to do. What is the right decision? So you're just not experienced enough to know what the right decision is to make, the right choice to make. And then the other thing is, you're maybe not confident enough that if you think that is the right choice, but that means I'm saying no to doing that piece of media or whatever it might be, and that might, the risk there. So there you end up either with decision paralysis, where you don't do anything, or you try and do everything, or you do nothing. What do you think? You don't sound that convinced.
I'm just wondering whether you can see signs of it early. I totally agree that it's really intertwined with confidence, and experience definitely helps. But I think you can challenge someone to see if they can understand the concept when pushed.
Yeah.
And I think there's people who take to it. And I think it leads on to another point, which is ability to take feedback and to respond to a prompt. So I think you're completely right to say I expect you to come at 20 as a strategic thinker. I hear that that's not realistic. But I think there are people you can say, if resource was really limited, what would you do first?
Yeah. Whose
brain is kind of able to handle that sort of concept.
So if you did that in an interview question, because that'd be quite a good test actually, I think. Everyone can answer that question, right? Because there's kind of no necessarily wrong answer, or at least everyone can come up with an answer, right? You'd say, I think I'd focus on social, and then I'd focus on influencer or whatever. Everyone can kind of come up with that. But then how would you then judge whether you thought they had just sort of taken a punt and it was a bit of a fluke in terms of their answer, or whether actually there was some logic behind it? Would you actually just look at it and go, actually, that's a pretty good answer, I agree with that? Or, because they might have really thought it out and you don't agree with them, it doesn't mean that they're not strategic, you just might not agree with their answer.
I think it depends on the logic. It's like, explain to me why you've got to that answer. Yeah. And I think what you said about like your like learning diet curiosity question, it's kind of the same point. It's like either someone like naturally intellectually engages with that kind of question and is like energized by it and can give you a strong rationale, or it feels really uncomfortable. And a lot of it is in how a question is answered and like how comfortable someone feels with that level of challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
But it's interesting because you get into nuance where it's like, how do you read a conversation and someone's response, as opposed to like there being a yes or no process.
So on that, to take that on a slight tangent, with hiring for startup marketers, because I guess that's kind of that's the conversation we're having around, right? So if I'm a founder and I'm hiring, a team, I'm trying to start to build my marketing team. Do you still think the traditional way is the best way? And I think we probably follow the traditional way, by which I mean you post a job out, people apply with a CV or maybe a few kind of screening questions, and then you start to have conversations with them.
I think interview processes are fundamentally flawed. Like if you take, this is like the metaphor I always use for it. You imagine you basically go on like 2 dates and you're like, I'm going to move in for 4 years.
Exactly. It's crazy.
What?
Yeah.
Like that's so odd and such a punt on both parties, like both people's, like from both sides of the table. That's like such a crazy
interviews and buying houses are the two things where you spend the least time and they're both monumental decisions in your life.
Yeah.
How many times do you look at a flat before you decide to buy it? Like ideally you'd have a few viewings, but usually you have to view once, make your offer on the same day.
7 minutes.
Exactly.
Because there's like another couple outside being like, hi.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you get marched. Yeah, such a good point.
And so you're about to sort of, drop the biggest amount of money you've ever dropped. You're going to live there for a significant amount of time, and you probably spent 10 minutes looking at it, and you've got to make a really quick decision. The same with interviews. And like I said, that is on both sides. It's on the candidate and on the interviewer. I guess we've introduced the IRL working day, which I think is really good.
Yeah.
And one of our new joiners said that felt quite innovative and quite different.
So just listeners, let us unpack what this magical creation. we've done something truly radical.
Very shocked.
It's really incredible. So we, as a final round, pay anyone to come and spend a day IRL, which means in real life, kids, with us, where we give them a day that is as representative as possible of what a day of actual work would be.
And the key thing here is that it's any level.
Yeah.
So it's from our most senior people to our most junior people.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess what's innovative about it is that it's really varied. It's not like 5 rounds of back-to-back interviews. It's like actual tasks and like mucking in, and ideally you have exposure to a couple of different people in the team. You meet senior people, but you also meet people at any level, and anyone in the business can give feedback on that process. So anyone has the right to veto at any point. It's paid.
It's paid. I think that is which
definitely. Is like ethical.
Yeah.
But at least, I don't know why that's shocking. It's crazy that we pay people for a day of their time. Wild. Who would have thought it?
Yeah.
And it's made a pretty big difference for us, I think.
I think it's given us that real level of confidence.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of and I think there's been, a couple of occasions where it's helped make a decision, usually in the affirmative. It's usually a sort of crossing the T and dotting the I. We've got a pretty strong feeling, and it's usually a kind of confirming that feeling.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes that's fine. It doesn't for both sides.
Well, exactly.
That's the thing.
And I think the thing it's really helped with is that we don't get offers, like people don't turn down offers. And I think that's because by the end of that day, we've been so open. Like really, there's nothing to, like in some cases, there's like honestly nothing left to hide at the end of that. Poor Will, who we've just hired, left me at like 6:30 on Camden High Street because I dragged him into new business meetings and shown him like every spreadsheet in the company.
Done the job,
And he was literally like, "You've got nothing left to reveal." Like, I get it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been so beneficial versus the like strange dance that can often happen after an offer.
Yeah. So I think that's a good addition. I think having a task, I think brands should always sort of see the candidate's work in action if they can.
Yes, but make it time capped. I've seen so many times people set tasks that do not test the skills that are needed for the job or the environment in which you're going to be working.
Yeah.
So if you give someone a Friday to Monday to work on something that in a real job they're going to have 90 minutes to do, that's not going to give you a realistic outcome at all. And so often the task is like, either can you write my whole marketing strategy, which I've got many issues with, or it's just not the actual job. It's not the core of the job. It's like a easy thing to get someone to do.
Yeah.
So yes, thinking about task writing. I mean, this comes back to what you said at the beginning, like us working out that we had to really know what we needed from a role was such a game changer. And then us working out that we needed to set very careful tasks that were really reflective of the actual job, again, such a game changer. And then like thinking about how we run an interview process so that we have innovation.
But it's also an interesting one though, because I guess if we say we reckon we probably hired 40 people for brand hackers over 4 years, a lot of brands don't do that. You know, they might be hiring a team of 4.
Yeah, you just don't get the same practice.
So you just don't get the same practice, do you? So I think that's quite, you know, you might hire 4 and they're good and you go, great, we kind of got our 4-person marketing team. Maybe you have a couple of salespeople or whatever, but you actually don't really get to go down as much detail as we have, I suppose. It's both like the bad and the good.
Yeah, we've had to become real pros. What we seem to be saying is that we're not looking for marketing qualifications. We're not looking...
I don't know if we differ on this. I never go right to the bottom of education. I always look at almost, I know, exactly. Yeah. So I always look at everything above that. And then I might come to that later just out of interest, because sometimes it might throw up an interesting conversation. Oh, you did this or you trained there or whatever it might be. But for me, that's not going to be the interesting point. So the interesting points in an application is how do they answer the questions? And we usually set 2 or 3 questions, which shouldn't take them more than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's key. It shouldn't take them ages, but like 15 minutes. And again, going back to that question I asked in the interview, if this is your bag, these will be easy questions to answer.
Yeah.
And that will come across in your answers. So that's like the most interesting thing. Then I'm going to look at the CV and I'm going to say, okay, what's like useful, relevant, and that you can tend to see from the job history, and you can sort of tend to see what they put on there. And then I'll come down and I might have a look at their education. But to be honest, I don't really care if they did a degree in marketing, if they did a degree in politics, or if they did no degree. To be honest, I suspect often no degree is probably as good or a better qualification anyway. Because I don't know what they teach on a marketing degree, to be fair. I have a politics degree and it's never served me anything other than allowing me to bore on in parties.
Yeah, I've got an English degree and I'm really good at making stuff up.
Well, you are good at writing docs.
Yeah, in bullet points.
Yeah, true.
I love a doc and I love talking about something I don't know anything about for many hours.
Exactly. So I'm very sort of, I'm kind of at one quite extreme, but that's because I'm a self-taught marketer. I'm not a classically trained marketer. So I didn't even go through any kind of corporate scheme. I didn't go through the P&G or the Unilever and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
To the extent actually where I think there's some gaps in my game which is why we brought in other people to sort of fill those in, and that's the right thing. But to be honest, what I really want from a startup marketer specifically is those bits we've talked about, and I want them to show me what they've done in terms of marketing. So that's where those side hustles, or hey, I have my own podcast. Oh, great! Like, how do you market your own podcast? Or or I help this charity out. I did a bit of their social media. Great. That's so much more useful than having a 3 or 4 year degree in marketing. To me, and also it feels like the world of marketing is moving so fast. I don't know quite what they're teaching in those degrees that can still be relevant now. Now, I'm not saying that the fundamentals aren't important, because they are. But I don't know if a 4 year degree, you're going to come out and as soon as the rubber hits the road, and you're actually in a startup and doing marketing, I suspect you're not going back to that degree that much. What do you think?
I think what education teaches us is ways to think and ways to solve problems, and you can I was taught.
See, I don't think it does. I think it should do.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah. No, I think that's what people want it to do.
Well, I had a ridiculously if my education didn't teach me what it was meant to teach me, then there's something seriously flawed. I went to a very expensive private school and I went to Cambridge, so really it's probably healthy. You'd hope so, and it's healthy that I'm coming to this with peak example experience, but I was definitely taught how to tear apart a poem, how to and that's how to analyse information of any format, how to go into a conversation having read the spark notes of a book and talk to a world expert for 45 minutes and try and hold it together like you have enough to say and that you can hold your own in that environment. And to the point on like confidence, like why did I then come into work and be able to do strategy earlier than many of my peers? It's because I've been forced to make decisions to really ferocious people in a seminar or like a one-on-one setting. So I really think I was taught how to think. And that might not be representative of every part of the education system. But therefore, I think any marketing training, like degree or otherwise, like what I was taught at P&G, which is fundamentals, which is ways of approaching how to organise thoughts, I think is like as applicable in a world that's led by AI as it was when we were just doing like sugar painting, like whatever those posters are. You know, I always think back to like Victorian advertising where you just put a poster outside a shop and now it's like everything is so different. It's like, well, it's not.
It's actually not that different.
It's actually not. It's like comms. It's like, what are you saying? Who's seeing it? Do they want the product? It's like fundamentally the same.
I agree with that.
So I think I do like really hold a torch for the importance of marketing training. I don't think that's the same as needing a degree.
Yeah. So what do you look for when you look on a CV or when you're looking at an application?
Well, I am naughty. I do bottom up. I think I read it the other way around. So, and I'm not looking at education first because I care whether someone has a degree or not. As you say, I'm super interested in either situation. I think, like, I do look at people's GCSEs. I think I have a view that you can tell that there's like green shoots early. And then I look at what their first, like I'm interested in someone's journey. Like what was their first job? Was that in marketing? Did they move into marketing later? Because I think you can often read, there's often a story in the brands people end up working for, which is like the decisions that were accidentally made for them early. And I think there's super talented people who've just never found their way into the right kind of company. So I think there's a real risk that people read CVs and just look for sexy brands. And they just go like, have I heard of any of these employees? No, out.
Yeah, that's very true.
And I think that's, if your first job wasn't sexy brand and your second job wasn't sexy brand, it's really hard to make that transition. And so if the results are really interesting and the education is interesting, then I would like really consider that candidate. So I try and manage the bias in my brain.
There is an element on me that wonders if you really did want to work for sexy brand, and let's say it's in FMCG or consumer, so it's a brand that people would have heard of. You kind of make it happen, and I think if that's the route that you wanted to go down, or if that's important to you, or you think that's going to help, then you go and you find that job. And I remember I really wanted to work at Innocent. But when I started in my career in 2007, I was nowhere near qualified. And I think I did apply for a job and they were like, why, go away sort of thing. And then I came back 3 years later, having gone and done like field sales for 3 years for this really crappy vitamin drink. And then I had enough to at least get my foot in the door and then got through the interview process and then went to Innocent. And then from that, it then opened up another door, which was to go to another sexy brand, which was Brewdog. But I think I don't think I would have just settled for going to just like work for a chemical company selling like something really boring. I remember my first boss said to me, like, everything in the world has to be sold, including bricks. Make sure you're not selling bricks. I was like, that's stuck with me.
But if you're a brick founder, call us.
Yeah, exactly. We can do your marketing brilliantly.
It was so good.
Yeah, we sort of talked a little bit around what you might call green flags, things that we want to see. So whether that's being proactive, being curious, etc. How do you think you look for those on a CV or an application?
I think you just have to say them. And I think I don't mean that by saying, I have all the green flags. I think you show you're curious by talking about how you invest in your marketing development. I think you show you're proactive by talking about things you've done outside of work that are broad or interesting or like not necessarily even impressive. Like I don't need everyone to run a marathon, and it does feel like every CV someone's run a marathon. But show me what you're up to that makes me think that you're a kind of intellectually curious, well-rounded person. We talked a bit about like how in those bits under the headings there are those results and it's really hard to tell what anything actually means. I think that's slightly flattering. I think lots of CVs actually have kind of no results and have no numbers and don't even attempt to say this is what I did versus what happened for the wider business. So I do think like candidates should be pulling apart their experience, their results, like their impact, their results, and trying to differentiate that from the rest of the business.
I agree with that. The problem I find when people do that is I'm yet to see a CV that's given me an honest breakdown of what they did, i.e., it's always like, oh my gosh, like, why weren't you the CEO? Because you basically just ran this place. Whereas actually an honest thing would be, I was here for 2 years. At that level, these are the things I did. And so, you know, I owned social media for a bit and we grew a little bit. But,
do you
know what I mean?
And my Instagram following increased 77,000%.
Yeah, exactly.
Like from a base of 1.
Yeah, exactly. And because I had a budget of $1 million and a team of 15 sort of thing. I don't know, there's just something I'd almost just rather see an honest CV. So I agree that you do need to pick out bits that you did and you were responsible for. But I mean, I'd just love to see the bits that can become sort of conversation starters. And I guess it's hard because when you're submitting a CV, it's like, I need to just chuck everything on because this is my Hail Mary, I'm throwing it all in. But actually it goes back to that, maybe not strategy of like what you don't put on, but it is almost, isn't it? Yeah. It's that sort of like, what's really important and again, in the way that we're looking at what's important in our role, so that's really clear when putting our job description together. When you're applying, go, well, what's important for this job? And you might want to bespoke your CV for that particular job. It doesn't mean you have to rewrite it, but maybe you just pick out a few specific things and don't make it 17 bullet points because I don't read 17 bullet points. Now that's maybe me, but I glaze over on that. I think there's an interesting thing about whether the CV is dead or not. And I don't think it is, but I'm always very happy when someone says, here's my CV, but actually you should have a look at my website. And I'm like, great, they've got their own website. And it's like either a portfolio, or it might not even be a portfolio. It might just be a website that's basically their CV on a website. But at least they've gone that extra mile of setting up a website. I always look at someone's LinkedIn, sad as that is, but I do think that's kind of important. And are they someone who posts on LinkedIn? Are they someone who has opinions? It's definitely not a deal breaker, but that's definitely going to help. So I think if you are someone who's looking for jobs, I would just start posting some stuff on LinkedIn at least once a week, because at least it starts to show that you're not dead, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely to that. The thing that I think candidates really need to get their head around is that we're reading AI summaries now. We're not reading CVs.
Yeah,
and I don't think anyone's clocked that. So if your prospective employer is using any kind of applicant tracking system, there will be an integrated AI summary. And I don't know if LinkedIn does it yet, but it's a hot minute away if it doesn't already. So actually, you're not like, the CV is dying and the AI summary is taking over, and someone's got to get their head around how they write CVs for AI summaries, not write CVs to be read.
AI is always going to make your CV really dry, isn't it? Or is it not? Or is that the point?
I think the point is it just squishes it into what I see. We use Team Tailor, and what I see is 4 bullet points that is an AI summary of the CV that gives me a couple of stats and like draws out like the focus in someone's experience. And it's not that I'm not reading the CV, but I'm getting preconditioned by that AI summary and I can't help myself.
Yeah.
So I just think candidates need to somehow get their heads around the fact that that's happening.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or if anyone else has the balls to do that, I will be very amused. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoy our conversation, and we're so open to feedback about this stuff. Please do follow so that you can stay in touch with the Marketing Hustle and what's coming next. In the future, we're going to be exploring with more different formats. So I'm thinking about case studies with marketing directors. There's going to be some interviews with me, which I'm feeling weird about, but let's see how that goes. And I'll be getting more founders on for a chat. So please do stay in touch and you can be part of the ride.